To all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. This is Shawn Whittington's Paranormal Ministry Live 2.0. I'm your host, Shawn Whittington. I am a seminarian in the United States Old Catholic Church, and I'm coming to you live from my haunted house, my very haunted house, where I live. I'm looking at the dream catcher, not spinning, and it does feel very quiet today. So I think it's going to be quiet once my special co-host comes on. I don't know if it'll stay that way. And today is First Friday, so it's Christian Supernatural, and my very special co-host is waiting in the green room. I will bring her right out. Real quick, if there's anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz. And when you go there to visit, keep in mind my wife and I don't charge for our ministry work, helping people with their paranormal issues. So if you notice the donate button and you're able to do so, trust me, I know times are tough, but if you're able to do so, click on it and send my ministry in a small donation. I promise you it'll be appreciated from the bottom of our hearts. And trust me, we'll put it to good use. If you're having any issues of a spiritual nature, not attached to the paranormal, and you'd like to speak with me, there's a place you can make an appointment to speak with me. I'm a certified spiritual advisor, intuitive coach, listener. I'm a great listener. If you make an appointment to speak with me, I only have one. This is my rule. You talk, I listen, no judgment. So if you want to make an appointment to speak with me, you can do that there. Don't leave the website, though, without navigating over to the page called Introduction to Spiritual Warfare Course/book. When you're there, buy one or both of my books, will you? God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, and God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry 2. They're both there. If you get them off the website, I autograph them, and they come to you enclosed in a beautiful house blessing kit. Or you can get them a little less expensive at Amazon. If you buy them from me, though, part of the proceeds of every sale of every copy of my books goes to support stjude.org, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Nevada, and the ASPCA. So it's a no-brainer. You get to help some of the neediest children on the planet and the animals, too. How cool is that? On that, speaking of animals, yeah.
Yeah, growl. Hey, I just kind of want to make a little plea here. Once you buy your own book, gift somebody one, because Shawn has generously donated 2 books to us that we are auctioning off so we can provide meals for families for the holiday season. So I want to thank you publicly, Shawn, for doing that. You don't get a blessing kit, but you know what? You get blessed because you're giving away books and you're helping out people. So if you want to take and place a bid for these after you bought your own to give it to somebody else, get a hold of me and let's hook up somebody else. And I'm just going to simply ask this. Shawn, it's up in your area to do what you want to do with it. But I'm going to ask everybody, keep this man in your thoughts and your prayers. And you can do what you want to with it, but he's had a pretty damn tough week. So I'm going to ask that everybody takes and really keep this man in your thoughts right now because he's struggling and he needs your help. So, and there, I got it out before you tried not to do something about
it. Okay. There you go. I'm not dying. Well, we're all, you know what? I heard somebody the other day, well, my bishop said this, but he was quoting.
That would explain that smell, though.
He was quoting somebody else when he said that. I think it was the one of the stars from that old TV show, where all the kids were always in their bikinis on the beach dancing. Annette Funicello, I think, was the one who quoted this as saying, "The moment you're conceived, you become terminal." And isn't that the truth? I'm fine. we're having some. I said goodbye to a fur baby, my last fur baby, this past week. So I'm going to leave it at that. Anyway, um, there's a course there also on my website that you can sign up for. Introduction to Spiritual Warfare. It's a 12-week online course, college level course that I teach. I'm the instructor, and all my students that graduate get a stunning diploma, certificate of completion, suited for framing, along with some other very special blessed gifts that you can only get from yours truly. So you can enroll in the course there if you want. If you want more information about the course before making that type of commitment, you can either reach out to me and talk to me about it, or you can go to the Shawn Whittington's Introduction to Spiritual Warfare course Facebook page and read a little bit about it. It's not going to teach you how to be an exorcist. That's a completely different calling. But it'll teach you what I've learned in the deliverance ministry field and battling this kind of stuff um, that you should probably want to know about. If you want to learn how to really draw your line in the sand, make a stand, circle the wagons, put up a good fight, uh, hopefully not the fight of your life against, God forbid, true evil if it ever comes calling. This is the course for you. So there you have it. Yes, been one of those weeks, and today we're going into Labor Day weekend. Tomorrow's my 21st wedding anniversary. Haven't gotten my wife anything. It's going to be raining here in Vegas. It never rains in Vegas. It's going to be storming and raining here all weekend long. So we're having lightnings and thunder. And if I lose power and you lose me, um, my co-host is having the same issues up there. You may lose us both, and then you're just will be stuck with Zach for the next hour. Maybe he might even bring Adrian in, and I'll throw that out there too. She's my guest next week, so that'll be interesting. All right, guys. It is First Friday. It's Christian Supernatural. Every month on First Friday, my special co-host comes and does her thing. So without further ado, let's please give a big warm paranormal ministry family welcome to my friend, my co-host, the one and only EIRA WULFNOTHSSON.
Hi.
Howdy.
How
Yeah,
are you?
I'm doing good. I'm blessed. It is what it is. Life happens, life goes on, and I'm blessed. Um, don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I know you're blessed too. Zach's blessed. His wife's blessed. Everybody I know is blessed. We are blessed as a people, and we're gonna get through all of it.
Yep. Well, today's Power Places, a discussion on places of power.
And I'm just gonna throw this out there, and then I'm gonna shut up. When you sent me a text message not too long ago what topics you wanted to go over today, and I thought, how interesting was that? Because I was just, and later on in the show I'll bring them up to you. I was just looking over a couple of places that I believe would fall into that category that I've have at the top of a list of places for me to go on a pilgrimage when that day finally happens after I'm ordained a priest. These are two places that I want to go to that are very very powerful spiritual wise places, and I'll talk to you about this. But great topic. When I first met you, you were living at one of these places, and the some of the experiences you had there used to just blow me away. So on that note, I will be
Yeah.
quiet now. Let you talk to people about power places.
Okay, so places of power can be found all over the earth. They're natural to the earth. The Hopi called them spots of the fawn. So they sprinkle the earth like the spots on the back of a fawn. And a lot of people for many years thought of them only as spiritual places that they couldn't really measure or confirm. But now we have instruments and technology that tells us we can measure the energies found in these places of power with scientific instruments. And they are places that have higher than average electricity or telluric currents running through them that crisscross. The density of the telluric currents is closer or higher. And they're also found on magnetic anomalies. So that gives us the electromagnetic spectrum. in a higher than average reading. We also know that paranormal researchers report that everything in the paranormal lexicon appears to happen in places where their instruments are telling them that there are higher than average electromagnetic frequencies. Their EMF meters. I researched a piece of land. It spanned around 1,000 acres. The ranch was multiple, 2 or 3,000 acres. It's now a historical preservation site. There is some mysterious archaeology built upon it. And the place that I researched, I walked in for 8 years. And one of the reasons I chose to take the deeper dive into it, because originally I was just a scout, I took a deeper dive into it to find out what was happening to me in this place. I was having a lot of visionary experiences, which I couldn't tell if they were visionary or if they were physically happening. There were time slips. There were a lot of There was a lot of orb activity, ghosts, apparitions. There was things that went materialize and dematerialize, such as, objects I had with me. So I wanted to know if I was losing my faculties or if this was something that was induced naturally. And sure enough, I started sharing my research. I then began to work with a professor at Princeton who educated me and sent me many other instruments, and a lot of study came from that. So places of power, we find our oldest megalithic structures built upon them, our ziggurats, our pyramids, our oldest cathedrals. We find some of the older cemeteries and the older estates in England, Ireland, Scotland. We find royal palaces, ancient royal palaces built upon them. And there is a reason for this. In these places, and as I've spoken of in past podcasts with you, these people were of higher education. They understood alchemy, which was the science of the day. They understood that chemistry plus consciousness could change the natural elements and manipulate the forces. So this was a form of magica, of course, and the knowledge of magica was very ancient. So these people were carrying an ancient wisdom when they started to utilize these places of power. 100% of our spiritual places are built upon places of power that have the higher than average readings that I just discussed. And the most important aspect of these places was they would commune with the gods. They could channel the gods easier. They could merge with gods. They could have religious experiences. They would have visionary experiences. And then also to perform magica, which we've talked about coming down with the fallen angels, the 200 fallen on Mount Hermon. They realized that magic itself is much more efficacious, much more powerful when performed in these places. So this was a knowledge base that was so coveted and so secreted that we don't know how old it is. It goes back to ancient Egypt, of course, where we believe alchemy was birthed. But in truth, before Egypt was Egypt, we know it came from another civilization far older, because Egypt seemed to rise up fully formed with all of their magical practices and their knowledge. So as an ex-occultist, I'm Roman Catholic now. I know people probably already know that, but for those who don't, as an ex-occultist, I have seen in many of the orders, and the two orders that I belong to, the most coveted implements for ritual were all made of gold. You had gold tables, you had gold implements, pentacles, etc. And you have to think that if you're going to be operating in a place of power, which is a very conductive place, so your magic is tied in history with the gold implements to this place of power. I'm not getting this out right, but I'm going to swing around and make it connect. So places of power are found in places that have high readings of the telluric currents. These currents run over the land like water. And every morning at 3 a.m., the magnetosphere passes over the earth, passes over you. Anywhere you are on the planet at 3 a.m., the magnetosphere will electrify anything that will hold a charge, anything that will conduct. Places of power are very heavy in gold, silver, iron, lead, copper. These are all conductive metals. And so they're built on quartz crystal veins, which also conducts. So the conductivity aspect of it to create the electromagnetic frequency was very important to people who were practicing magica, the ancient form of magica. In fact, magic today is just a whisper of what it once was, because everyone at one time only did their magic in places of power. They didn't bother to go outside of them. In ancient Egypt, we would see people wearing, not just ancient Egypt, even the Hebrews and Israelites, the lamans of gold, the belts of gold, the headdresses of gold. Everything was about gold jewelry, gold bracelets, gold sandals, gold fingertips in Egypt. So these human beings, the priest class, was trying to become conductive also and become a part of that electromagnetic soup that was happening in places of power. So they were not only geomancing themselves. Well, we won't call it geomancing because that means earth, but they were geomancing the earth to increase and harness the energies in these places, i.e. creating the pyramid structure. So the telluric currents run up the structure and then concentrate at the top or in the middle. And so the most important aspect of these places was everything happened in them but the kitchen sink. You could contact any god or goddess, commune with them, merge with them, do work with them, do magic with them. We've talked about this in other podcasts. But this is the mystery of why gold was so important in the ancient world. People say, well, in alchemy, people were trying to turn lead into gold, but that is a metaphor. Lead represents base consciousness, gold represents spiritual consciousness. It's all tied together in the mythology. So they were really trying to become spiritual gold in these places. Very powerful. And of course, they ended up going down the rabbit hole of power and control, and that was not a good thing. Originally, God had created these places naturally with physical law as well as spiritual law. And I believe that they were created for times such as this. When things got really, really rough in the world and we forgot about God or we forgot our connection to the divine, we could go into these places and touch God himself. As we know, our cathedrals are built on them. They use sacred geometry. They've geomanced them. They've harnessed the energies. The people that built the cathedrals were from a line of Freemasons. We know that, occultists. They go all the way back to Egypt. The people that built the pyramids, they were stonemasons. One of the most important parts of these locations is that there is a lot of granite over underground water, underground streams, underground fault lines. Water is conductive. This creates the telluric currents in the magnetic anomaly, again, the electromagnetic frequencies. So this ancient lineage that was the wisdom that was preserved within it, we see it today in the high functioning occult aspect of Freemasonry. I don't think regular Freemasons know anything about it, as well as most occultists don't know to associate places of power or gold, the reason for it, with these places. It's pretty obscure and arcane knowledge. So in these places, people just going out into nature will come across one. You might be sitting in one right now and not even know it. Your house is haunted. You always come into the intro saying, I'm in my very haunted house. I often think privately in my mind, I wonder if it's on a power spot.
And there's,
because
there's also plenty of elemental activity out there too. So I
yeah.
think so.
And the spiritual or invisible nature is very much like visible nature. It's an ecosystem.
So you
We
think it's more so where I live as
hmm
opposed to me and
yeah,
my wife just being, for lack of a better term, conduits towards the spirits.
I do. So the foundation of what happens to you is related to the land. So these places were originally created to commune with God the creator in times of hardship when we didn't know about him, we could have an encounter. Um, Most of the spiritual experiences recorded in the Bible or in ancient texts, you can almost guess, if you can't get the measurements, that they're on a place of power. The Dome of the Rock is a place of power. Some of our major cities, because of the Freemasonic lineage, are built on places of power, and then they're geomanced with the sacred geometry, the specific type of stone used, granite, over water. Um, it just seems to all be right in front of us and all woven together in this perfect tapestry, that everything spiritual revolves around these power spots. So something I noticed with places of power is everything but the kitchen sink happens to you in the lexicon of the paranormal. People will have ghost experiences. Things will materialize and dematerialize. They'll become more clairvoyant, more clairaudient, etc., more psychic. Um, there is a secret to going into them that don't let me forget to not talk about if I get on another tangent, because I didn't really have a lot of time to get this in order and prepare it properly. But everything but the kitchen sink happens. You see cryptids, Bigfoots, UFO experiences, orbs, you name it, bat squatch, whatever. People come up with things you've never heard of that they encounter in these places. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is this happening at Esetti Ranch? Why is this happening at Haunted House ABC? Why in Scotland and England in the ancient castles and fortresses that are built? It's a power place. It's a place of power. It's naturally made that way by the forces themselves, the earth itself. And it also does something else to us. When you enter a place of power, most people are unaware, or they don't know that they're walking into one. And we know that electromagnetic frequencies at this level influence the brain. They do specific things to the brain. So remember, I said that power places are all our spiritual locations. They're all our ancient cathedrals. Well, all those places used granite to be constructed, or they had what was called an altar, a granite altar. All altars were once made out of granite. Granite is also a conductive, charge carrying, charge holding stone. Because we go to the altar to alter ourselves, it happens naturally in a place of power at the granite altar. We go into an altered state in these places because they're built on a lot of granite. It's just like going to the granite altar to alter our consciousness. It influences our brain, it affects our brain, and it puts us into a natural altered state. But it's a very unique altered state. You can be walking through a place of power that has all the right characteristics and parts and pieces that construct it by nature, and you won't know that you're in an altered state. It is such a clear, um, subtle altered state. You can be performing a mathematical equation or taking photographs or talking to your friend, but you are in an altered state. And it's one of the rarest things I've ever seen when it comes to an altered state. Usually, people in altered states, they're meditating, they're doing yoga, they're doing whatever. But in this, you can be functioning at a high level, a high intellectual level, and be in an altered state. Therefore, when I was out walking in this place for 8 years, and it took a while to get, it was cumulative. The longer I was in the place, the more these things happened to me. They didn't happen at the grocery store. They didn't happen at the gas station. They didn't happen, outside of it. But when I was in these places, I would see, hear, I mean, it was extraordinary. It didn't happen every day. It had to be at certain times of the day, or perhaps there were certain constellations that we know align, sometimes changing the energies. That's a little more metaphysical. But at certain times in the day, the magnetosphere has charged these places, so you are more influenced by it, and the altered state is definitely happening to you. Now, we also know that DMT, or N-dimethyltryptamine, is released in our brains every morning at 3 a.m. when we're dreaming. When the magnetosphere goes over the earth, wherever you are in the earth, it charges anything that will conduct electricity. You are conductive. You know that. You have iron in your blood. You have crystalline salt in your blood, in your body. DNA is even conductive to a degree. So DMT is released every morning at 3 a.m., but in these places, it can be released at any moment as the forces reach a certain level of influence. Everything, all plants and animals have DMT in their brains. They secrete DMT in their brains. Plants do, animals do. People know DMT as ayahuasca, Amanita muscaria, peyote. These are all psychotropic, psychedelic substances found in plants, but they're also found in the brains of us as well as the animals. There is no logical explanation known to science for the existence of DMT being released in our brains. No one can explain why we have it. It serves no bodily function, really. So, definitely God created that for a reason. He created these places for a reason, and these two things work symbiotically. While I was out in these locations, there was a lot of archaeology. It's mysterious, it's inexplicable. No one knows who built it, no one knows why it's there. There were many stones called white fire stones that would mark burial sites or mark specific specialty sites. And these stones were regular granite andesite stones that were covered with a white substance that looked like paint was splattered on them. When we did the laboratory testing on this substance, it came back as quartz crystal, but it had been liquefied over 3 to 5, somewhere around 3 to 5,000 degrees to get it to melt and end up on the tops of these stones. Like, it looked like white paint had been splattered, and it would drip down the sides of the megaliths. Obviously, it came from a comet or some aerial phenomena, natural phenomena. But the quartz crystal also added, because quartz crystal will hold a charge. So this place that I was in, as I would reach, locate certain structures and certain archaeology, I would find these white firestones marking them. So clearly the people that built this site, they built lines and lines and lines of rock walls made out of andesite and granite. And these rock walls followed the telluric currents up and down the hills. Now, the hills were interesting too, because they were also mini magnetic anomalies, because they were volcanic fumaroles. So all volcanoes will create a magnetic anomaly. One of the biggest is, you can find them around Mount Shasta or Mount Adams or Mount Rainier, or any of the famous mountains in the United States. When they're shaped in a parabolic way, it's not only a magnetic anomaly that's created, but the telluric currents run up to the top. And all the ancient people would tell you, wisdom sits in high places, or biblically, God lives on the top of mountains, or every culture believed gods lived in the mountains. Because when you went to the tip of these parabolically shaped hills, you would have a spiritual experience there as well, because it was within a magnetic anomaly, and the telluric currents, the electricity, would run like water up the sides. So in this place that I was in, the rock walls would follow the telluric currents. And if you want to study energy, you can study water. It moves the same way across the land, the telluric energy. And they would always end up at the top of the hills. So there's a lot of stories of people possibly geomancing these sites in order to bring more fertility, more happiness and peace into the people, because this type of energy, when it's done naturally by the earth, is very beneficial to our health, our fertility, our DNA. You know, it affects us spiritually as well as physically. People went to these places for healings, not just spiritual experiences, or not just from the occult side, the darker experiences of communing with the gods and goddesses, which are fallen angels. I mean, these places are indifferent because it's the natural forces that sustain them, and the forces are indifferent. So when you go in making a choice. You either go in for something beneficial, or you can use them for pure evil, power, and control to do magica, I guess is the point I wanted to make. But there is an antithesis to these two that is natural to the earth, which is called a geopathic stress line. And geopathic stress lines are also known as dragon lines. They are not an efficacious type of energy. Germany, the German government did a study on them, I'm going to say like 30, 20 years ago. And they found in a village that the people who had cancer were living on the geopathic stress lines, and they would move their bed a foot to the left or a foot to the right. And most of the people, not 100%, but a higher than average amount of them, would heal.
Hmm.
With the geopathic stress lines, we find that snakes, cats, insects, and raccoons really are drawn to them. In the telluric currents that are good for us, we find that deer give birth in them. Cattle will want to give birth in them. You know, the other animals, they all are attracted to them, and you'll find they nest in them. And we're drawn to them as well. We always feel really good when we enter one. We can feel it. As Christians, we want to be careful when we start to have supernatural experiences. These places respond to the universal language, or what's called the language of the birds. This is a universal archetype, a language based on universal archetypes of symbols and sigils, and all creations use this language to communicate. So what I mean by that is we see it in petroglyphs, in hieroglyphs, in runics, in Akkadian writing. Especially petroglyphs is a good example because we use symbols to communicate meaning. Words have power. The symbols eventually became words. That's a whole nother show. I think I've talked about it in some of the previous shows. But when you go into these places, if you are focused on something negative, you're visualizing something negative, your fears are saying, oh my gosh, you know, a giant monster is going to come out of the forest and chase me down the hill or tear me to pieces, you get what you ask for. These places respond to your emotions as well as the telepathic symbolism in the language of the birds that you're throwing out. So if you go into a place in a state of anger or fear, that is a place of power, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a spiritual experience that is terrifying. You'll face the dragon, you'll face the demons. I like to think of going into these places when someone's in a state of anger or fear or envy or jealousy. It's like throwing blood into the water for the demons and the negative entities. They just come right in. And those are the type of visuals you'll have. Now, I was fortunate in my case when I was in this place of power. I was in a really good place.
What originally brought you to that place? And real quick, I want to throw out that I don't. You sent me so many photos of amazing phenomena occurring there, and then you also had the cave. You mentioned the petroglyphs. You had caves there that you discovered that had petroglyphs in them.
Yeah.
What originally brought you to that location?
Well, you know that from childhood, I was swimming in the occult. I was born into it. So I had always had an affinity for ancient Egypt based on some artifacts I was given at 8 years old. I inherited some 3,000-year-old artifacts at 8 years old, and that's a whole nother story. But suddenly I was fascinated with ancient civilizations, and I had always wanted to find a location that I could go out and experience the archaeology. I had also grown up every summer in a place that had archaeology. It was a Native American reservation. So every summer I was exposed to archaeology and mythology. And I always wanted to be able to study something like that. And so it manifested because I'm an ex-occultist. A lot of times you can manifest certain circumstances in your life that you desire, and it manifests. So one day,
How did your animals? How did they? Did you notice something different? Like from where you're at now to when you were there at that location, you've always had animals as long as I've known you.
mhm.
How do they behave there?
Well, animals, there's such a strange connection between animals and human beings, especially if you hear a lot of sucking weird noises. My dog is chewing on a toy, and she's huge. She's like 130 pounds, so she's making really gross noises over there.
That's the
And
second time you've said that, and you've caught my attention both times. I don't know if that's
Sophie,
saying something about me.
Sophie, stop it. That's so embarrassing. So my animals will learn to hunt what I'm hunting. And I was hunting energy that was connected to an archaeology site filled with archaeology. And I was a scout, so I wanted to find the archaeology. I would find the archaeology. When I found a measurement of energy, suddenly I would glance to my right or my left, and there would be archaeology. So the ancient people were also dowsing for the locations. Dogs will naturally douse whatever it is you're looking for. And my dogs began to lead me to archaeology sites, which were also holding hands with higher than average electromagnetic frequency. So I also dowsed so I could douse my way around. I got to a point where I didn't even need dowsing rods anymore. Your body is a phenomenal instrument for sensing whatever it is you're looking for. But my dogs would be attracted to the energy, and they would go and find the locations often.
Wow. And they seem to
Yeah.
genuinely enjoy being at those places, right?
There's a good chance, Jennifer, there could be something under Silicon Valley, but it's probably created by technology that's trying to mimic these places of power. I often wonder if the pyramid was the only human manufactured, if it was made by humans and not fallen angels, but it's the only human manufactured place of power that we know of. I often wonder that because they geomance these places and increased and harnessed these natural energies so finely tuned that, with technology today at the highest levels, we know there are occultists at these levels. We know they study the occult. We know the government studies the occult practices. So yeah, there could be there could be something under one of those things.
Well, I don't know why I'm sitting here in the dark apparently, but I mean it's nice and bright when I look around, but it looks like I'm in the dark. But what are some of the places out there that you know of that you know that there's power under them? Because you just mentioned that, look, the Egyptians thought that the pyramids were they were an afterlife machine,
Yeah.
basically.
Well,
So
they're saying the same thing, really. When you
yeah,
think about merging with the gods or channeling the gods, or the only way they have into this world really is through these places. These are doorways, and the door is just left open. It's just always open. You don't have
but
to go do a ritual to open it up. It's just this is the weirdness of power places. This is why if you're in Yosemite, a lot of granite, a lot of underground water, a lot of minerals. So it's already naturally a power place. But people go missing in Yosemite. Look at David Pilates in 411. And
okay.
yes,
So what about the triangle? Is that
The Bermuda Triangle, that's another one for sure. For sure. And I don't have measurements on these places. This conversation today is not my specialty. It was just my vocation. It was something that was in my life because I was an ex-occultist. I wasn't just any ordinary occultist.
Well, they got triangles now. They're discovering all over the world, not just the Bermuda one. But
Right.
I'm also thinking of places like Taos, New Mexico, and I'm thinking of like
Right.
Stonehenge.
Yes.
Yeah,
And they generally, if you don't see megalithic building on them or you don't see archaeology on them, believe me, it fell down, it got destroyed in a cataclysm, but people mark these places. And if they don't mark them, Sophie, stop making noises like so gross. She's licking her foot now. Um, People will mark these places. Like I said, it can be so subtle. I would see the white firestones marking locations. And then when I would look closer, I would see donation stones or a cairn or an Inukshuk stack, something that would tell me, yeah, somebody is vision quested here or spiritually done worship there.
I have another dumb question. You know you're going to get at least one or two dumb questions from me a show, but we always talk about this triangle or that triangle. Um, do you honestly believe that they are a legitimate triangle, and is there a reason for that, or could they
No,
be the
no,
Bermuda Circle or the Bermuda
yeah,
Box?
these places, that's just how they vector in the things that have gone missing, or they vector in between certain points on the landscape. No, they're not shaped like a triangle. they're they blossom. They also experience entropy, where they go smaller. They will drift with whatever underground conductivity is happening. If the underground streams are drifting, I mean, dowsers can move streams. I know that's not scientifically appropriate to say, but I, I'm not a scientist and I don't really give a what about it. But when you've seen it happen, and people have seen dowsers move water, a little to the left or a little to the right, and then they hit water. So these places move and drift with the natural forces and construction of the geology. Um, they're not shaped like triangles. They can be in the haunted house that you go to cleanse or whatever.
So
Yes.
you buy into the okay, I'm thinking of another term that people throw at this as portals. Do you buy into that, the portal theory?
Yeah, portal's a rather cheesy way to describe it now because it's gotten into the mainstream and people that don't really know what they're talking about use that term. They're doorways. And that door is always open in places of power. Now, I'm not saying you can't see an apparition in a place that's not a place of power. I'm not saying you can't have a religious experience in a place that's not a place of power. I mean, God can do whatever he damn well pleases. But these places are there, for a reason. They're sort of like, in the positive sense, they're like a self help place. You can go in and commune with the creator of the universe, with Jehovah or Yahweh, with God the Father. That's why our cathedrals are built upon them. But then you can also walk into this indifferent, very physical, something rooted in the physical realm. You can walk into these places and you can invoke Satan. You can invoke, any fallen angel, god or goddess you want to. And your magicka will be far stronger and far more. Um, People just didn't even do magic outside of these places. They didn't bother. That's why they made the temples specifically the way they did. That's why they built their most important structures on them the way they did. That's why you could say Washington is built where it is and the way it is. If you look at the symbolism in Washington, it's this is the modern times compared to ancient times like Egypt, and you see the balancing of the obelisk, the male phallus symbol, as well as the Senate building with the pregnant belly of the feminine, where are presidents inaugurated? right in the middle, So it's all there. Paris the same way, Rome the same way. This ancient understanding is so old that and it's lived this long. It's been preserved this long in the wisdom streams of the invisible colleges. We have a miracle where a mother found water for her orphanage, where God guided her to look. Yeah, Jennifer, for sure. Dowsing is a real thing. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I do have a couple of places that are on the top of my list to go to. Have you ever heard of St. Patrick's Purgatory?
Is that a location?
It's a little island. I think it's called Station Island, and it's in
No.
County Donegal, Ireland. But the only way you can get to this little island is by boat,
Hmm.
and they won't let you on the island with shoes on. There's no shoes allowed. So you get off the boat barefooted. Then the boat leaves and it leaves you there for 3 days. So you just fast and pray. But there's a monastery there that uh, legend has it God brought St. Patrick's there and showed him the entrance to purgatory and instructed
Oh,
him to
yeah.
build a monastery over it
Yeah, I
to
have
keep
heard
the
of
dead
this.
from. Yeah,
I
I
have heard of
definitely
this.
want to go there. And then I want to go to. I've been invited to Molokai, which is a great honor. You can't get on Molokai because that was the Saint Damien started the monastery there for the lepers, and the whole island was like the leprosy colony back in the day. Everyone was sent there from the Hawaiian Islands. So I've been given permission by this one priest I still talk to go there, and that's got to be a very
Yeah,
powerful
and those
place
are
too.
all on magnetic anomalies. They're volcanic. Also Saint Michael in Normandy or in
Yeah,
France.
yeah.
Yeah, they're all extinct volcanoes that it's the higher than average EMF combination. It's going to happen. And gold is important. Remember, I was talking about how the ancient, lords and kings all were infatuated with gold, and they would wear gold on their fingers, on their feet, and they would go in. They also consumed gold in Egypt. They wanted to be super conductive. They wanted to literally be the gods, or go to the gods and commune with the gods. They consumed a substance known as mufkuts. It's MFKTZ because we don't know the vowels that were used. They didn't use vowels like in Hebrew. And it was a powdered white substance that was made into cakes that were shaped like little pyramid cakes.
Hmm.
And they would consume this white gold, known as mufkuts, and then they would become the spiritual god with the spiritual gold. So they were obsessed with gold. What's funny about mufkus is it's made alchemically. I actually made it and I've consumed it. It it's known to leave the bottle and bilocate and then go back into the bottle.
Wow.
I mean, mine when I made it and consumed it was years ago, but it would just disappear from the bottle and then it would reappear back in the bottle. It would be all over the drawer and then it would go back on. There's something very strange about monatomic gold. It perhaps is the secret of the philosopher's stone to immortality, but the ancient priest class of Egypt believed that they would live forever if they consumed it. They would become more godlike. With Lucifer, since the Garden of Eden, it's always you can become like God. So everybody that was exposed to magica or these, enormous troves of wisdom pertaining to the forces of nature, which were used, that knowledge was used for magica. They all fell into the power and control trap. I guess, by talking about power places, what I wanted to tell Christians is if you're out in nature and you suddenly have a really bizarre experience with something terrifying, first of all, you might be in a place of power. Second of all, check your emotions. Are you angry? Is someone with you angry? Is someone luring the dark forces that manifest and are attracted in these very sensitive places to emotion and symbolism? Check yourself. Pray. Ask Christ. Archangel Michael, Mary. All of the demon deterrent the demon deterrents that you can think of, call them in and think of something loving and pure, and these things will go away. If you're invoking Mary or Michael, they're going to run in terror. So that's very painful for them. But, that's my check and balance as a Catholic. If I'm in a place, a haunted house, a power spot, somebody's researching, I have found that if I just do my prayers and ask Christ to send whatever is not supposed to be there to the foot of the cross, no harm, no foul. If it's a good thing, it remains, the experience happens. If it's a bad thing, then it goes away. I mean, why would you want to interact with a fallen angel or something negative and scary and horrible? A lot of people in the New Age spiritual community say, well, it's shadow work. Yeah, I know what that is. You're not meant to live in the shadows. Face your demons man to man, head on in ordinary reality. They say, well, it's in your deep subconscious and you need to face the demons in your life. You really don't. With God, you don't.
I think one of the coolest things, EIRA, is that they were talking, and I heard this the other day. Gold is not an earthly substance. Gold was not originally made here on Earth.
Yeah, and I wonder about quartz in some cases when it comes from meteors that or comets that come in, as with the white firestones. I think a lot of things, even water, comes in on comets. So you're absolutely right. It could have just come from a big planetary collision or cometary collision, or an asteroid. And meteorites are considered very sacred. That might be why gold is so sacred, not just for its physical powers and conductivity, but because, like Zach said, it came from heaven. To the ancient people, it may have been transported here that way, and people somehow knew that. I don't know how they would know that, but people know things.
You mentioned earlier, something else stuck out to me earlier was this, you manifest what you manifest depending on how you feel, and you got to be careful. Like, you don't want to be angry or have negative thoughts when you go into this thing. And I remember an indigenous holy man at a sweat lodge session that I went to. I was very scared to try some peyote, but he said you have to, in order to ensure that you are in the right frame of mind, to go to the other frames of mind that you were going to be taken to. And I remember all of a sudden I was standing, and then I looked down, and there was somebody in a on all fours, hunched down at my feet below me, and then I realized it was me. And then the holy man said, "You need to rejoin with yourself.
Don't trust those holy men.
You both have to join. You both have to take the journey together." And that always stuck out to me when people say you're two-faced, or you've got two sides to you, the
We all
yin and
do.
yang and the evil. But you have to face that together.
Yeah, two wolves
Yeah, and
inside
then
of
when he
you.
goes walking out of the room, the wise man looked and goes, "Do you see the face of that white boy when I told him that?"
I don't. You know what? I don't buy taking plant medicines. I think that's another trap. If we were meant to take plant medicines, it would have been more convenient for us to get them if God wanted us to have them. And that's why power places are there. You don't need that. You don't need that. It just opens you up in a natural, easy way. You're not under the power of the plant. That's domination by a plant. And the shamans are all like, "Oh no, you got to take this and go see what, happens. And you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates." Again, no. There was a time when I was all in, I was, like I said, an ex-occultist, and I invoked and evoked and convoked and anything you can imagine. I know now, after going down so many rabbit holes, that it is garbage. That's the negative influences. They want you to take the peyote. They want you to take the ayahuasca. You're vulnerable. You are under the vulnerable. You're so vulnerable. You need the shaman to give it to you and watch over you. No, that's not how it's supposed to be. That's like alien abduction. They take you against your will, but everybody says, "Oh, I would do it again." Yeah.
Before we run out of
Okay.
time, I want
Whatever.
to make an announcement for you, and you're probably going to get mad at me for doing this. I didn't check with you first, but you got together with my publisher, and you're
Yeah.
finally ready to get your book into her hands and edited. And
I have to make another pass on it, and it's 70,000 words. That could take 2 more months. I have to make another pass on it. I read it out loud because when you read your work out loud, you use a different part of your brain. You can catch your mistakes and the rhythm and how you lay down the words. So my godmother came and visited for a week, and I read out loud and I went, crap. I just repeated myself 20 times. I have to go back and cut, a lot of stuff
it's
out.
gonna. I'm
But
just
yeah,
proud of you
it's
that you got
there.
this far. Yeah.
It's there. I mean, the first book I wrote took me 5 years and I never published it. It just takes a long time, especially when you're looking at a 300-page book. My book's going to be somewhere hovering around 300 pages.
Are we
That's what
getting
I
together
have.
next month? I know that there's a guy.
I
I
think
have a.
we're I think we're missing next month. You
No,
said you're
you're
going to be going
scheduled
to your seminary or your
at the end of
consecration.
October. So you were going to be
Mm,
here next month, October 6th.
okay.
November, the first Friday in November, which is the 3rd, I'll
Okay.
be in Kentucky getting ordained. So we won't
Congratulations.
do November, but we will do next month, October.
Okay. And I want to apologize. This was a really difficult subject to explain, and I kind of went all over the map, but
I know there's a lot more to it, so just make a note if you
nah,
want to pick up where you left off. We can do that next month.
well, normally I study and prep, and I didn't have the chance because my godmother was here recently visiting. So normally I prep a little better and get my notes straightened out, and I go in a sequential order. But I'm also known to go off on tangents because everything I talk about is so complex that it's just that's how it comes out.
Well, do me a big favor. Give your fur babies a big hug and a kiss for me. You know I love you. You know I respect you. I can't wait till we get together next month on First Friday, and I want you to make sure you have a very wonderful and blessed um, holiday weekend.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, and God bless your puppy that you recently sent back to God. And I'm sorry for you. I
It,
feel your pain.
it
And
is what
God
it is.
bless everybody in the audience. See you next month.
Alrighty. I'll see you later.
Bye, Zach. Thank you.
Bye bye. EIRA WULFNOTHSSON. She will be here next month again, First Friday, October 6th. I love her. She's very cool. Next week's guest, Friday the 8th, September 8th. This should be interesting. I haven't had her on in a long time. Adrian Clayton. That's right. My other
I quit.
co-producer. This could be a great thing. It's just going to be interesting because depending on the kind of day the two of them may be having together, Zach may want to stay clear of the studio. I don't know, but his wife Adrian will be here, my guest next week. She's been visiting some really interesting places and going on some phenomenal paranormal investigations and ghost hunts. I can't wait to find out what she's been up to. And Zach, you better be on your best behavior next Friday. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
well, like I said, we're getting together with a group of people today to go in and check out a place where, unfortunately, a huge number of children lost their lives in a bus accident in '61. And so there's about 10 people that are coming over that they're going to get out and go over and check that out today. So who
Very
knows?
cool.
There may be some more stuff to talk about at that time.
Very cool. Very cool. That'll be fun next Friday.
Yeah, I
All
will.
right.
Oh, by the way, I won't be here. I'm going to go on vacation.
Good move. You better show her how. She hasn't She hasn't pushed buttons in a long time. So if you're going to do that,
She
you better.
can hear you. Shh.
Okay, guys, my church. If you're interested in the church I belong to, United States Old Catholic Church, go to www.usocc.org. Just go there, be pleasantly surprised, or go to bishopjameslong.com. Go there, be pleasantly surprised. I can't talk. Um, If you're interested in night prayer, we have night prayer every weeknight, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. One of those websites has the links to night prayer if you're interested in that. If you're interested in a Bible study, that's every Wednesday afternoon and Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Pacific. Again, you can, usually that's on a Facebook Live. He's also on Spreaker and TikTok and some other things. The links to that too are on one of those websites for night prayer. I'm sorry, Bible study, if you're interested in that. Thank you to Zach and Adrian Clayton, my co-producers, for co-producing my show. I couldn't do without them because I'm completely computer illiterate. Check out Zach's website, communitypayitforward.us. Communitypayitforward.us. Again, just go there, be pleasantly surprised. You know who next week's guest is. People are still asking me about the show. If you missed Eli Roth Presents The Legion of Exorcists, it's streaming now on Discovery Plus and Max. And you can also buy the entire season 1 for like $10 at Amazon Prime Video if you're still interested. I still get a lot of people reaching out to me about that. People are also reaching out to me thinking I disappeared off of Facebook. I didn't. My original profile got deactivated. I don't know if I was hacked or if Facebook got mad at me about something. They won't return my messages. But that I'm now on Lawrence Morace, Lawrence, Morace, Morace. And Shawn Patrick Whittington is in parentheses after that. But that's the new profile. If you were a friend of mine, and I had, I think, almost 5,000 Facebook friends on the original profile. If you're one of those people that still want to be friends with me, find me at Lawrence Morace and send me a message, and we'll reconnect. Thank you to Things Network. Thank you to Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. Thank you to Skeleton Key Network. Thank you to PACT, little P, capital ACT, Podcasting for All Coming Together channel, for all these networks simulcasting my show. God bless you all for doing that. And it's bad joke time. I'm going to pull a bad joke that one of you sent in out of this haunted carnival barker hat. It's my poor attempt to put a smile on everybody's face before I say goodnight and enjoy the long holiday weekend. I tried burying camouflage the other day, but I couldn't find any. Good night, Danny. Good night, Jack. Good night, Dog. Good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. Remember, if you see me on the street and I'm talking to myself, just keep moving. I'm having a group meeting. I love you all. God bless you all. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. I'll see you next week. Peace.